It started with a hum and ended with a scream. Colleen did it standing at the edge of my yard, clipboard in hand, nails clicking like she thought she was the metronome of this neighborhood, her eyes locked on the soundproof box behind my fence, the generator keeping steady rhythm through the evening air. "Remove it, or we fine you. $1,000 a week, non-negotiable," she said, smirk curling like she already knew she'd won. But she had no idea what she was up against. That box wasn't some toy, wasn't for convenience during hurricanes or rolling outages. It was the line between life and death in my house, and every breaker and conduit inside it was wired by my own hands, signed with my license, inspected, stamped, legal. And more importantly, it was the promise I'd made to my daughter after the last blackout nearly stole her breath. You know what I mean? Some lines you just don't cross. Colleen thought she had authority, that the HOA ruled every blade of grass in Oakwood Pines, but when she leaned over my fence, tapping her pen, she was trespassing against something she couldn't regulate, my vow to protect my kid. The next morning, after the storm had knocked out half the block, my generator purred like it was built for that exact moment. Lights burning warm, oxygen machine steady, my little girl sleeping safe. Victory for me. For Colleen, fuel for her fire. By 9 sharp, I had a bright yellow violation taped to my front door, fines already retroactive, her signature stabbing the page like it was a weapon. Paper didn't scare me. What unsettled me was how fast she escalated, as if she'd been waiting for the first excuse to flex. This wasn't about noise or aesthetics. It was about control. That evening, I walked into their so-called special meeting. Rows of stiff folding chairs, the smell of stale carpet and burnt coffee hanging in the air. Colleen at the center, gavel in hand, smile painted on like armor. "New business," she said, her eyes cutting to me, talking about unauthorized equipment, community hazards. I rose, slow, deliberate, told them straight, permitted, inspected, outside your jurisdiction. A ripple ran through the crowd, neighbors murmuring, some shifting uncomfortably, some curious. Colleen's jaw twitched. She threw back the usual threats of discretion and standards, but I leaned forward, voice low enough to slice. "Then prove your discretion outranks state law, because every line here is backed by statute and signature." Her mask cracked, just for a flicker. Enough for everyone to see she wasn't as untouchable as she pretended. Afterward, I noticed Mark Holloway, the secretary, standing off to the side. Didn't say a word, but his eyes carried guilt. That kind of silence? That's a man on the edge of breaking. Later, at the park, he finally spoke, shoulders slumped under the pavilion lights. "She won't stop, Denton. She wants to make you the example." He admitted what I already suspected. She'd gone further than threats. She'd tapped into my system, dragging a cord over my fence like it was her personal socket, tampering with live current. A reckless stunt that nearly shocked her and could have burned down my house. That wasn't just HOA politics. That was criminal. Theft of service, endangerment, felony territory. And Mark had seen it. Back home, I checked the logs. Spikes, irregularities that matched exactly when she'd meddled. My profession didn't allow me to see anomalies as flukes. They were evidence, clear as day. I started building the binder. Permits, breaker logs, photos of the scorch marks, every notice she'd taped to my door. Paper stacking up like ammunition. At work, my colleagues, other licensed electricians, looked over the data. They shook their heads. "This isn't household draw. This is tampering." Their voices confirmed what I knew already. My evidence was bulletproof. Meanwhile, Colleen doubled down. More notices, more threats, whispering about property liens. She paced outside my fence with her entourage, snapping photos like paparazzi, fingertips grazing my gate latch like she owned it. Neighbors watched from behind blinds, pretending to rake leaves, pretending not to notice. But fear was cracking. People could smell momentum shifting. And Colleen, in her fury, made her biggest mistake. She assumed I'd fold before I took it outside her jurisdiction. That's when I carried the binder downtown, laid it on the county clerk's counter, my license badge visible. Tampering with electrical systems, theft of utility service, trespassing, documented, timestamped, inspected. The clerk's tone changed the moment she saw the credentials. This wasn't neighbor drama anymore. This was felony review. Word spread faster than fire in pine needles. Colleen stormed onto my porch with 2 board members, shoved another violation at my chest, voice raised loud enough for half the block to hear. threatened liens, accounts, everything I owned. I let her finish, then smiled the calm smile she hated. The county will be here soon. And when they are, you'll be the one answering questions. Her face drained, because that one word, county, was outside her kingdom. She spun on her heel and stormed off. Neighbors saw it. They whispered. When the inspector showed up, Alvarez, sharp as a scalpel, clipboard in hand. Half the neighborhood found reasons to linger on porches. She examined the generator, checked the grounding, the logs, the scorch marks, her aides snapping photos. This unit is compliant, she said, pen tapping against the panel. If the irregularities tie to external tampering, this is theft of service. Felony territory. And just then, Colleen shouted from across the street. This is HOA jurisdiction. Alvarez didn't even flinch. County law supersedes HOA bylaws. The words echoed like thunder. Colleen's face burned red, but her power evaporated in the silence that followed. Neighbors weren't pretending anymore. They were watching the fall in real time. That night, Mark invited me over. For the first time, I saw the stacks of papers he'd been keeping. Emails, meeting minutes, receipts, proof of selective enforcement, misuse of funds. He hadn't been brave enough to speak before, but he'd been documenting everything. Now, with Colleen over the line, he slid the folder across his table. I'll testify, he said, voice shaking but steady. That was the moment I knew it was over for her. My binder held the technical truth, his folder the human one. Together, it wasn't a vendetta, it was a case. The next board meeting turned into theater. The clubhouse packed wall to wall, neighbors shoulder to shoulder, whispers buzzing. Colleen sat at the center as always, gavel in hand, chin high. She opened with her usual sermon about hazards and nuisances, eyes fixed on me. I stood, briefcase in hand, and laid out the evidence. Photos, breaker logs, scorch marks. Explain this, I said, voice carrying. The room stilled. And then Mark rose. I saw it, he said, steady now. I saw her drag the cord, saw the sparks. And I've kept records, other times, other abuses. It ends tonight. Gasps, murmurs, shouts from the back, neighbors no longer afraid to speak. Colleen slammed the gavel, but her voice drowned beneath the tide. You put us all at risk, someone yelled. Another, we trusted you. Her power fractured in real time, cracks running through her throne until it wasn't a throne anymore. It was a cage. Days later, deputies rolled into Oakwood Pines. Patrol cars parked at her driveway, neighbors watching from porches, phones recording as Colleen, clipboard queen, smug ruler of fences and paint colors, stood in her yard while officers read her rights. The cruiser doors closed with a slam, and the silence that followed was louder than any gavel she'd ever held. For the first time, Oakwood Pines breathed. Relief, not fear, filled the air. That evening, I stood at the park, the same pavilion where Mark had whispered his doubts weeks earlier. Now neighbors clustered openly, planning elections, talking about rebuilding. Mark's face looked lighter, freer. She's out, he said. They're calling a special election. And for once, he smiled like a man who'd stopped hiding. I nodded. The neighborhood needed new leadership, needed trust again. My daughter slept safe at home, oxygen machine humming steady. The generator purred behind its fence, not as a symbol of conflict anymore, but of survival, and of justice finally catching up. Colleen had tried to turn it into a weapon of control. Instead, it became the anchor of her downfall. So yeah, it started with a generator and ended with a scream. But the real ending? That's still being written. Because Oakwood Pines isn't just a subdivision anymore. It's a community that saw the line, watched it hold, and now has to decide what comes next. Some folks call me stubborn. Others say I just did what anyone would do for their family. Maybe both are true. But I'll tell you this, the hum of that generator at night still feels like victory. You know what I mean? Now I want to hear from you. What do you think? Was Colleen just drunk on power, or was this about something bigger? Should HOA boards have that much control, or did this one finally get what it deserved? Drop your thoughts below, because I promise, this debate is just getting started.